Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Sorry for the little delay there. So, just before I jump into things today, just want to point out a few. I've done a little bit of updating to the interface since the last session. So, this is following some of the tips again. So, my initial setup was based on tips by Suze Hilton. I think with the handle NoOpCat. And I'm just going to add a link to her Medium post in the channel just because I found it very useful. So in particular, there's a little the Twitch chat bar is now visible in the stream, so that if I'm posting this again afterwards anywhere, then context will be preserved. A few links to some social pages, and yeah, that's more or less it for the all I wanted to cover there. But yeah, just a few updates since last time. So to jump right in then, uh, the where we had left it last day was we're getting very close to the point of finishing off the core of this research part of the language. And while I'll probably still be adding bits to it as I see fit, and I'm also still working very much on the work in progress branch, so there's a lot of cleanup of actual code that needs to be done as well before it goes into the mainline branch. But yeah, so it's very close to done, or at least close enough to the point where I'm very excited to get started working on the actual meaty part of the second phase of this, which is the initial implementation of the Laurel programming language, which is the ultimate aim of this current research project, is to develop a syntactic core for exploring different approaches within the Laurel programming language. So a lot of the features will probably be kept, but maybe the syntax will be altered based on that kind of more domain specific language. So it'll still be a general purpose programming language, but suited to the domain of writing scripts and gluing different programs together, very much in the vein of Bash, trying to uh, capture the kind of expressiveness and ergonomics of Bash, but maybe covering over some of the more, I suppose, what could be considered legacy aspects of the language. So with all that said, some of the last bits that I'll be focusing on today then will be this bunch of features. So I'll probably try and tackle this first because it's could be a hairy one. I just want to get it out of the way. Array ranges, so allowing uh, we have support for array indexing. So this will be to allow specifying a subrange using a subarray of an array or a list using the general slice operator. At the moment, there's what may or may not be considered a bug. I'm considering it a bug at the moment, which you can um, you can declare a variable twice in the same scope, so which is a redundant thing and generally handy to kind of flag and disallow redundant operations to the developer, because it can indicate um, a a kind of I suppose they can flag a misunderstanding to the developer. It's kind of one of these things. I like to think of it as the compiler meeting the programmer halfway. It's not that the compiler knows what the programmer meant, and it's not that the programmer fully intended one particular thing, but the compiler or interpreter can flag something to the programmer to say, hey, here's a thing you might not have intended. You know, be more explicit in order to shut me up, basically. And then finally, yes, so this could be a trickier one, maybe or may not, maybe not. It's more a purity thing. So just the current structure of how I'm associating. So in this language, objects carry or values carry the object source with them. And what I mean by object source is if an object is if a field is referenced from an object at more or less any point in the program, then the object that it was referenced from is then carried with the value. And the reason for that is then if that field is a function or any if that field is a function basically and that function gets called, then the object that is basically carried with it is then bound to the this variable, providing a kind of a lightweight, hopefully intuitive implementation of the kind of this operator, or not operator, but this I suppose special variable that people will be used to from other languages such as Java. It wouldn't be the same semantics as JavaScript, which I believe is function scoped. But yeah, having said that, that's kind of the plan for today. If I get all this knocked out, which could be unlikely, but if I do, then I might even get started looking at some of the initial. I might start looking at the initial work on the kind of Laurel work in progress branch. So with that all said, what I'll do is just jump in. So where I left it last day, let me just go into the test file, and this I believe was demonstrating the I assume the append operator. In fact, this might have just been some messing around that I was doing between like since the last stream, which was to just verify some interesting behavior. So let me just recompile this. It's kind of funny one if I recall, and well, this is kind of straightforward. This is if you have a list and you have a value in it, and you do a plus equals on that index, you can assign back into the value in the list, and that works as expected. We get a 3 out here. Then the second part was okay. So this is actually just appending to a list. That was one thing I was wondering about before as well. Oh, do I need a special syntax for appending to lists? And I don't think I do really. I think it suffices just to use this plus equals syntax. There was something interesting that I thought I was looking at in between though, and those are fairly straightforward. Maybe it'll come to me again. Interesting in the sense it's not something that you'd want to do in a regular program, but it was curious somewhat, the behavior, something to do with references and arrays and things, possibly. So yeah, I suppose I'll just jump into writing an else if then. So what I'll do is I'll save this as test, and what's that? What that was increment. It's doing two things, but I probably need. I'm duplicating it because I need to keep track of all these things that I need to add to actual tests in the main line. So test increment index. Val at index and array or list append. So that's that. So then, now that I've that backed up, what I can do is test.txt will be demonstrating else if. So we'll say let x is equal to 2, and if x is equal to 1, then it'll print a. If it's 2, then it'll print b, and if it's 3, then it'll print c. So let's give that a shot. And we have unrecognized token, so that would be, yeah, as expected in that context. In fact, so I'll replace that with an else, or no, I'll keep an else, so I'll demonstrate it with a multi-branch conditional. So and in fact, what I'll do is I'll encapsulate that into a function, and it'll be called test. And so we'll go test. We'll demonstrate a couple of things here. So how do I do? Oh, I think it does a declaration and introduces it into the new scope. So am I still doing pairs for array iterating? Can't remember. So so for IV anyway, we'll try this in 1, 2, 3, 4. Do I have? Again, I'm forgetting all the features that I've actually implemented. I don't think I have an actual range, like something to generate a range yet. But what I'll do is test v, and I'll still be getting a token error here anyway, with the else if, because it's not unrecognized. Yeah, so it's, I'm guessing, again, I'm not sure the exact line numbers because that's still something I have to do, but I think it's balking at that because if isn't expected in that context. So let's go ahead and make it expected in that context. So let's see, where do I have an if statement? There we go. And the kind of the regularness of this grammar, similar to Go and Rust, is what allowed us to handle kind of basically ignore the dangling if or dangling else problem. But still not sure what's my best best approach here to allow for kind of cascading else's. So one so that so that's an expression and then a block, and a block includes the braces. So what I could do is when I get, in fact, I'll split these up a little to make it clear, but maybe what could work is to say that an if statement can consist of a single if statement, and it can consist of, if it's followed by an else, then the thing that comes after the else can also be an if statement. So instead of being a regular block, it can be followed by an if statement. Now that will give me kind of a recursive rule, which I could then kind of flatten in in the resulting action. And I wonder, is there a clever way, a clever but simple way of kind of flattening this so that I could say it could be an if statement or it could be a block. I suppose just doing it this way so that yeah, that would probably be it as far as simplicity is concerned. And what I'll do just to allow it to compile at the moment, because I'm not sure if it's actually correct. You know, if this is it seems like a valid approach to me now, but whoops. Let's see if it actually makes sense to LALRPOP. And that seems, oh no, it's still compiling. Compiling the actual, or generating the actual parser. Yeah, that seems to have generated a parser. Okay, and it's actually evaluated it, and what's happening here is it's evaluated our test, and all of these branches are just being kind of dropped because I'm saying to, okay, handle those by just saying, you know, the else statements are none. I could, like, I don't necessarily need to flatten those, do I? Probably not, but I should, I think. Anyway, so what I'll do is in the AST, I need to update if. So an if won't just be an if and an else anymore. It'll be multiple ifs. So let's see. And so we'll have a condition, which will be an expression, and a block, which will be a vector of statement. In fact, I should probably create just a type alias for block as well. But that's all right for now. So what an if will be branches, which will be a vector of branch. And then that'll be yeah, sorry, I was just thinking out because I'm seeing vectors of statements and vector of expressions, and I was like, those aren't blocks. But yeah, the blocks are the vector of statements, and maybe I will introduce a type alias to distinguish those. Will I do that now or later? I suppose I won't interrupt the kind of slight rhythm that I have. So I'll introduce that later. So yeah, so what I'm going to look at as a reference is this action for generating a property list, or even where do we have? Yeah, even a regular parameter list. I think they all use the same idea. So the idea is I'll introduce a block here, And when the if statement comes in, so first of all, I'll have to create, so I'll have to adapt the existing if statement declarations. So that'll be an if, and what else? So the branches will start off as a simple vector of 1 that will be a statement branch with a condition and a block. I think I'm better off leaving that multi-line because there are a couple of things going on. I'll do the same down here, but with the else statements actually populated. And finally, when I get the other else statements, maybe I'll put it down here, then the branches that I get from that will be appended to the current branch. So let's see, let branch equals that, and then I'll create a new branch or a new if, and so a new branch, and I will take the else statements, and what do I do down here? I clone the list that's coming out of there. And can I just do this maybe? No, I probably wouldn't be able to. If that's an if statement, and an if statement will now return I wonder will I have to do some kind of pattern matching on this? How do I handle it down below? It's a bit simpler down below because I am using I'm not actually returning an AST node down here. I'm returning a vector of AST nodes, so I have kind of the raw data, and I can kind of manipulate it freely without further matching. So what could I do here? I'll probably have to adapt this somewhat to do the same thing. So an if statement could then return what I could do as well is have the condition be optional. It kind of loses information, but it would mean that I could have just a vector of branches rather than rather than, what am I trying to say? I could have a vector of branches rather than a special type which pairs a vector of branches with an optional final branch. But that's probably structurally better. So what I might do is instead of returning an if statement, so if statement won't return the statement itself, it'll return, yeah, it'll return a pair which will then be used to create the statement. So it would be something like I'll sort out the names in a second. I always say, and then I never actually do it, but and then that would turn into, could I do the destructuring in that, I wonder? I can check that in a minute. But anywho, would go statement if, and then branches, and then else statements. And that should be what I want then, and make the work down here a bit easier. So that will then be a vector of branch, an option vector of statements. I'm just going to jot down block type in AST. And with that said, that now changes this, so this is now a tuple instead. And this does the same thing. Yeah, I'll just get rid of that. I wonder, will there be a way of getting rid of the if cons? Probably wouldn't be worth it. I wouldn't be able to extract it to this layer, and I could extract it out. But what do I want to, for the sake of it? It probably doesn't need to be split up that much. But anyway, rambling as usual. So what I'll do is I'll grab branches, and I'll do the same as what I have up there. So I'll have, oops, branches and else statements will come from else statements. Now, not liking how I'm using else statements, maybe if else statements. Next we would have, oh, hello, unavailable user 5. Welcome back. So next what I want to do is basically append this new branch onto the branches that I have. So it would be branches insert 0 and this new branch. Although that was for because I was building the list, like for example parameter lists, I was building them up backwards in this case, with this recursive mechanism, do I need to do the same? Yes, because I'll be discovering the if else statements recursively, and then at the bottom, once I've discovered the else statement, I'll be building the actual AST backwards. So yes, I think, at least in my head right now, I think I do need to insert that at the start of the list of branches. So then what I do is I will return the new branches and else statements. So with that, that should now be more or less it, actually, should it? You know, save for correcting what's been written there, and then handling the actual evaluation. But that that should be yeah, I think that could work. Oh, how am I? Yeah, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for asking. Yeah, doing well. Excited to hopefully get the final pieces of this core done today, and then hopefully move on to the basically the more novel features of the language I'll be building on top of based off of this. So yeah, doing well. How about you? So yeah, so now, oh, unexpected 192. I've got an error in the actual LALRPOP file. So let me see. It was an unexpected semicolon. So a semicolon where I should not have a semicolon. Huh. I'm a little stumped. Let me see. It's saying line 192, but there's no semicolons on line 192. Oh, there's a semicolon after a closing brace. There's a semicolon after a couple of closing braces. That one makes sense, I think, because that's a statement. Probably doesn't make sense there, but I'm not sure why it's giving out about those now. You know, it's probably best not to have them, but I feel like those have surely been there for ages. At least I don't think I introduced those today. Oh dear, what 727 errors? Okay, interesting. Can't find prop items. I'm going to have to there's probably something very silly that I'm doing. So what I'll do is I'll try and build it back up piece by piece. First of all, I'll try re-enabling those and putting the semicolons back. Just so that just because if they were there before, I don't think they should be a reason for an issue. Unused import. Oh, so is it that the file that's being imported itself is actually bad, and it's causing the compilation of the parser to fail? Very possible. So what am I looking at here? I've got if branches, else statements. Not seeing an issue here so far. Oh no, sorry, it's not. It's just that I'm not actually using anything from this yet. So maybe, although those are coming from the AST file. Maybe I'll just try returning an if with empty branches and empty else statements. And I'll say that happens on Python. So what's the issue here? Maybe if I just scroll up to the top. Not making things easier. So yeah, so it seems like the root issue is in the AST. It's just that it took me forever to find it. Okay, I declared this as an enum instead of a struct. And was that, I think that was, whoops, did I insert something there? I think that was it. That was kind of that was a tricky one to debug. It could be worth highlighting with the kind of LALRPOP developers, just because, yeah, it was an issue. Like, it wasn't an issue with the grammar file itself. It was an issue with something that the grammar file depended on, but it was causing massive issue. And just like, it wasn't a problem that LALRPOP was failing. It was just that the amount of output was obscuring the issue. So not found in the scope. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So statement branch doesn't have a block statement. It has or sorry, the value, if the value block wasn't declared in that scope. Similarly here, and then that should be it for the grammar issue, the issues in the grammar file, is it? I might be able to move on to the. Wow, it's that time already. That was that was a longer time than I expected. As in that passed by quicker than it felt. Anyway, variant not found in AST statement. Oh yes, so because it's not, it's actually just it's not a variant. It's a type of its own. So branch. And usually what I do is if I'm matching on things and I use a block in one, then I try to use blocks in all of them, because I find it kind of trickier to read if there's kind of a mishmash of different kind of styles of match branches. So yeah, so that's that seems to be everything for the grammar, and now it's onto the eval file. So So now if statements and cond are no more, instead we have branches and else statements. And so what we'd want to do is for branch in branches, what I'll probably do is and so that'll be cond, and that'll be, what do I call that second part? In AST, in a branch block. Yeah. So we have conditional as before, and then it evaluates the Boolean, and then if same as before, if the Boolean is valid, then return the statements evaluated in the new scope. And then if none of those evaluate, it attempts to evaluate the else statement. No, it has to evaluate. Oh yeah, if there is no else statement, then it doesn't evaluate it. But yeah, that should be close to it if statements isn't found. So let's try that. And that needs to be mutable. That makes sense. Doesn't help that the LALRPOP errors are raised on, but I suppose that makes sense. They're, these aren't errors that LALRPOP itself is highlighting. It's being highlighted by the compiler. LALRPOP is just putting the code into that position, and then Rust is saying it's on line 40,000. So yeah, it makes sense that LALRPOP wouldn't be mapping it to the local line number. So branches, yeah, just have to. Do I do it like that if it's a destructuring? Wonder what kind of work LALRPOP is doing under the hood that's causing it to, yeah, private issues. So AST, all of those need to be, whoops, pub, don't they? But what kind of work LALRPOP is doing under the hood to basically take so long in that kind of code generation stuff. And we've got ABCD. Nice. That's else ifs finally resolved. I had kind of a major dissociation with them, and just I was making a big deal of them in my head that that would be a very tricky thing to implement, but it wasn't in the end. It wasn't too bad. Now that could be an area that I refactor. So where was, so the semicolons themselves didn't seem to be an issue. So I'll put that back. I don't think I actually need it. But if it ain't broke. But having said that, the other thing that would be nice to sort out before I commit, if I can, just to make the code here a bit more uniform, would be this, just to perform the destructuring. No, that's not possible. That's a pity. I think that would have tidied up the code a little bit, but it's not a problem. Yeah, I'll add it all. So then that is add support for else if statements. Cool. So that is that done. Checked off the to-do list. And let's see. Do I have a flow section there? I do. If and that's that whole section done. So then the next one is, and again, I'll copy my test file, test else if. So the next bit to do is, let's see, let x is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we just print various subsets of that. So let's see, 0 to 3 will print out 1 and 2. 1 to 4 will print out 2 and 3. So like a lot of languages, so the first number is in the inclusive range, and the second number is the exclusive end index. So you can actually specify the length there. Let me see. Again, I refer to Python. If I have any issues, 1, 2, 3 x's, and if I go x's, then x's, which will be 3, yeah. And if yeah, and that's another thing, is that I can leave out various parts of these so that I can reference the start or end of the list. And like Go, like the approach that Go takes compared to the approach that Python takes, I won't be allowing negative indices, because what I can accidentally do, or at least I've seen some people doing this, sometimes it can actually work as intended almost, but for the wrong reasons. If you do it in something like a loop, is that what was it they were doing? And it was it even a sublist? It was might not have even been a sublist. It might have just been a thing like this in a loop, and they were still able to iterate through all the values of the list, but it had an off by 1 error, so that they were actually starting on the last element, and then so in this list they would have gotten 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, or something like that. And for the benefit that allowing negative indices gives you, which I'm not sure, like, it's nice when it is kind of nice when you're scripting, but it's not that much better, in my personal opinion, than just doing len and then -1 or something. So I'll be saying that that won't be supported in this language anyway. So with that all said, as usual, then next area that I want to take a look at is what? So I'll take a look for a square bracket. And here we go. So at the moment, we have location like that. So what I'll probably, and in fact, so if I run this unrecognized token colon, so that's as expected. And what we're going to allow here is this will be start location and end location. And those will actually be optional now. How do I do optional stuff again? It's a question mark, but where? So it comes after the production. Yeah, so it should be something like that. And we'll always have a I might have to create a new production for this second part. Either that or split this into two. Yeah, I'll probably go with that approach rather than splitting it into two. And so I'll have, so this is now going to be, let's take a look at the AST. So an index, even though that should, yeah, index probably isn't the best name for it anymore, but start location will then be an option. So let's see. Range is basically used as a generator. Maybe I'll introduce index range just to make the evaluation slightly easier. So what are some ways I could implement the evaluation for this based on which of those two is present? So if I just had simple a single variant that had start location and end location, I could figure out what needs to be done based on the following breakdown. So what I could say is, so if, no, because I can't actually distinguish then, or it'd be slightly trickier to distinguish the difference between, is this an index of a range, is this an index range that just didn't have an ending location, or is it a single index? So rather than putting that in a Boolean or something, what I'll do is I'll just keep the do variants distinct. And that kind of messed. There was a bit of symmetry in this expression enum before, but now that this is multi-line, kind of breaks that up a bit. I wonder can that be reverted somehow to have them all on have this on a single line as well. Types are a bit complex though. Oh, actually, before I move on to that, I've already started. I wanted to do that block refactoring, didn't I? And let me just see. I did make the commit, didn't I? Yeah. So I'm working on a new working index or working directory. So will I look at blocks now or later? So again, am I in a bit of a rhythm with this? Yeah, so I suppose I'll just continue with what I'm working on now, and then I'll hopefully go back to, and it really should just be a tiny thing to create a type alias for a vector of statements. But yeah, but all my refactorings are in theory very straightforward and simple, and then kind of open up a can of worms. So that's start location, end location, and that's so that's that. So the existing index doesn't actually need to change, and this will be a separate variant for handling index ranges. Oh, and yeah, so I actually don't really need to call it start location and end location, realistically, because the fact that those are locations, I feel, is somewhat captured by the fact that this is called index range. So I'm going to put those all on one. All in one. So hopefully that should be enough to allow me to then oh, that'll be an interesting one. Can I assign to an index range? I don't think I'm going to bother even looking into that right now, but it's probably something to investigate at the very least. So consider assignment to index range. And it makes sense that it's possible. I'm not sure it's something that anyone would want to do, or at least something that I'd like to see people doing. I'm sure there's some great uses for it, but yeah, I suppose logically and semantically speaking, it's an operation that I think makes sense and probably should be supported. So expected an enum option. So yeah, that changed to an option, but I need to change that back to a box. So I need to put that. Oh no, it's already in a box now. So yeah, and that can't be like that anymore. And while that's compiling, I'll take a look at how this is actually going to get evaluated. So that's an index range, and it's going to have a start and an end. So the expression itself, so at the moment I would only be allowing this to happen on a list. In future, and if I could figure out the exact list semantics that I want, or the list string representation, I mean, then I would allow it on strings too. Can only index range lists, I thought. That'll be the verb. So with that done, so match v, so that's location. So this is going to be a tricky one because I need to get both of these values out of their mutexes, so it's going to be nesting it pretty deep, and both of them need to be ints. Ooh. Yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a mess. Let's see, can I create a function to handle that? Something like let's see, with unlocked val, and that would take something like start and a closure. Although I went down this rabbit hole before, and closures are a little tricky. Oh, it's terrible, but I might just, again, for the sake of actually getting something working, I'll just do this really awful, deeply nested monstrosity, basically, and clean it up later, basically. Why isn't that, or do I have to, so, let's see. So that must be an integer, and that's matching that lock. Yeah, I'm not even sure what's going on in that section at this point, but it should be doing what I want. And so that'll be start and end. And I'll remap those, even though, again, well, it's not like, you know, yeah, this section of code is pretty bad already. So, you know, adding a few more bits of mud to the ball of mud probably isn't, yeah, I don't know. So anyway, I now have the actual start and end variables, and I have x's, so I'll be able to, is there an easy way in Rust to do kind of a subvector? And I can just use those as a range. Can I do something like this? And I do oh, this is difficult to look at, I'll have to admit. At some point I really do want to do, like, it's kind of driven by the fact that I personally don't have a good way of kind of, how do I say, grouping these extractions of variables out of their mutexes. First of all, I wouldn't be able to inline it in. So, you know, a typical approach to, you know, avoiding nesting like this would be to, it's like promises versus callbacks. Instead of deeply nesting things like callbacks, you can extract a kind of a contextual value out of the block and then continue processing on that. But that would generally require language support, such as, like, with promises you have the event loop, and then the other bit of it is, so the other approach that I could potentially use is to basically so at the moment I'm getting, so I have like 3 different values that I want to get out of their individual mutexes, but I'm doing them all kind of sequentially, and each sequential retrieval introduces like 4 levels of indentation. So um so to reduce that down, like my gut instinct would be to, well, first of all, if you could abstract that those 4 levels of indentation to just to a single function. So so you could have a higher level function that does the extraction and then allows you to run a function or a closure within the context of that thing. Then that would collapse those 4 levels down to one, and then you could still do those 3 sequentially, but you'd have 3 levels of indentation rather than 12. But there are a few difficulties with that approach. Number one of the levels of indentation that we're doing here is matching on variance, and that isn't so easy to abstract, because it basically, you can't write a function to say uh, that, okay, this parameter has to be a specific variant of an enum. You actually have to take the enum itself and do the match inside the function. You can, and again, I'm getting very abstract here, but what you can do is you could have the enum value that you want to extract out of, or that you want to match on, and you can say what type it should be in term, like, as a value. You could say, okay, if I pass in the string 1 here, or if I pass in the string int here, then it should match int, and if it's anything else, then it causes an error. But that turns your kind of compile time guarantee of matching variance to a runtime non-guarantee, because you're kind of determining after the fact whether the thing is valid. So that's one issue with abstracting those 4 layers down into one. So you might not get as much bang for your buck. And the fact that with generics and things, like, I'm definitely not as au fait with generics and closures and higher order functions in Rust as I certainly could be. So and I think creating an abstraction like that, if I wanted to make it general, of course I could make it very, I could make a bunch of one-off functions specifically for this, but it would yeah, it kind of create more code and more opportunity for bugs and things like that. It'd basically just be moving the problem elsewhere, which is fine to a certain extent, but you know so that's if I want to keep doing things kind of if I don't want to collapse those 4 levels of indentation into one. The other approach then, but again, it requires a level of familiarity with generics and closures that I don't have at the moment. But another approach would be to basically, if I say that, okay, I have these 3 mutex variables, and I want all of them to be unlocked and present at the same time. Oh, that could actually be feasible. Again, it introduces some kind of some sacrificing of compile time guarantees for runtime runtime ones, but it's something that I could potentially accomplish with my current level of familiarity. And the idea would be that it would take essentially a vector of mutexes, of arc mutexes. I would say, I could potentially generalize it even more, but I'm working with arc mutexes, so I might as well focus on that. So the idea would be that I could take an array of arc mutexes and then unlock all of them in kind of a recursive style almost. But the caller doesn't need to be aware of that. And eventually the caller will be pass again a closure. But there's the problem. I'm not sure how. Yeah, I've certainly opened up a can of worms with closures before. So yeah, just for the sake of keeping things moving, I'm probably just going to unfortunately leave it with the current approach as is. It 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 looks awful. It looks very bad. And the variable names make it even worse. But at least it should be functional, and there are approaches for tidying it up later with the abstractions that I mentioned. Both should be feasible in my head anyway. But yeah, for the sake of keeping things moving, I'll just do as is. So now let me see, Rustvec. So that's one thing. Is I want to see, can I get a range using the same kind of function as so slice index. So yeah, so that seems to support that. So maybe I can actually use the same kind of approach. So get range, and what does that return in that case? A slice index. So if you try to retrieve a so maybe because those are, it's using the same kind of trait. Is that trait bound? Can't remember, because you're using the same basic type in both the source and the target. Is that how it figures out the types? That, okay, if you pass a single index, then you get a single value out, and if you pass in a range, then you get kind of multiple items back. I'm not sure how it figures it out, but it looks like it. It looks like it figures it out somehow. So so with that in mind, it'll get V. How so this is so that gets an int. Because the items in it. So the elements of x's itself, and again, this just shows how bad this code is at the moment. It's fairly impenetrable, but the x's itself is a vector of values. So when I retrieve one, I can return it as is. Those are valrefs. However, in this case, I'll be potentially getting back a vector or something. So I'll actually have to wrap it in a new list. So let's see. So I'll change that to V's. Let's see. What do I want to do here? Potentially all I want to do is wrap that actually in a in a new value list where x's is v's. I'll leave the clone there just so I'm not sure if it'll still be needed. It probably is, but should be all right to leave it. So 802 expected struct val with ref, but found a value. Yeah, exactly. So so a new val ref. Whoops. This is some bad code. This is for any young people watching the stream. Don't do code like this. It will fully intend to clean this up in time. Do please take my word for it. But at present, again, because I've been implementing things and not refactoring too much, the current code is yeah, little rough, and by little I mean very rough indeed. So let's see, list. So with 7 errors, and what can we do to sort those out? So expected a result, but didn't find one. Well, good luck to me finding out where exactly that's that unit type is coming from. Is it because if nothing matches? No, I think everything's matched. Let's take a look at a few of the others. So 796. I'm actually gonna have to move the window for the evaluation over a bit because I'm just indenting so much. Found expected an expression but found an option. Yes, because it might not even have an end value. Oh, hairier and hairier. Let's see. So what? Maybe I could extract some of this. Again, it'll be kind of a single use function, but it might just clean things up and be just in as much as I need to sort some of these errors and make things a bit clearer. So I'll just call it get index range for the moment. And the idea will be, let's see. So first of all, I'll have to do a match on end to see if it contains anything. Yeah, so let's see. Let's work on this a sec. So basically we have x's, which will be a list value. It's a vector of that, and then the start is an optional. And what will that be as well? That would be an I64 by default. And I'll need to convert it to a usize. At the moment, they're kind of unsafe casts, but yeah, that's something that, again, hopefully will resolve when kind of merging this with the main line. So now that I have those, what I can do is let's see, maybe start and maybe end. So start will be then, let's start is equal to maybe start, or so can I do option.html? No, of course, that is not in vec. No, Rust option. And then, or it should be or else, and then yeah, an actual value. Oh, that's a function. Map. Yeah, sure. So how do I just say this value, or I'm sure it's going to be kind of very obvious and make me feel very silly when I find it out, but how do I just say, like, if it's none, give me this value? So I've got map or. Can or just do that? Can I take a, does it have to be an optional value? Feel like that maybe I just have to use an if else. Rust option or value. Yeah, I could match on it if I wanted to turn kind of a relatively simple operation into 4 lines. Get or insert value. Oh, maybe that's what I want. Get or insert 5. Yeah, I think that might actually be it. Get or insert. So that'll be 0, and then end will be maybe end, and that'll be the length of x's. And so that would that be all right? Return val_ref with source and string. Yeah, let's try that. So first of all, I suppose I'll resolve errors in this new function. 1090. Oh yeah. So clone expected vector but got a reference. So it expected a vector of values with ref. Oh yeah. Convert. You can convert a usize to an I64 and panic if it doesn't fit. What's the issue? Expected an I64 but found a usize. Oh yeah. Well, I suppose. Like I'll be changing that to a usize anyway. Maybe I'll take them as usizes. Yeah, I'll try that. Dereferencing them at the call site rather than in this function. Slice indices are of type usize or ranges of usize. Am I not defining a range here? In fact, because that's such a small statement, maybe I'll just throw it in there and save myself the bother of actually understanding what I'm doing. Oh dear. I suppose that was a fool's errand. So the type that can't be indexed by a range of mutable reference to usize. So that's because of this get or insert, I'm guessing. What could I do here? So I want to can I do that? I got rid of those earlier. So actually dereference the things. Yeah, that seems to have resolved that. So then let's see. Now it's still not going to make things too much better, but maybe a little better. So let's see, get index range x's start and end. And we get rid of a little bit of indentation anyway. And I get reference to an i64. So what I need to do there is let's see. And again, I'll copy those values and I'll need to cast them as the U sizes. Uh, 801 expected vector, and what is it currently? It's currently a reference to a vector. Yeah, that's that should be all right, I think. So 796. Yeah, expected a thing, but got a thing that wasn't that thing. So before I go into oh, I still need to I'll need to introduce, I would say, at least 2 more levels of indentation still, and that's what I was hoping to avoid. But let's see. So I'll convert that to maybe start and maybe end, to try and help make things some bit clear. So let some end is equal to maybe end, and that will match that. Otherwise, like, that's just crazy. Yeah, like 4 levels of indentation for that. But anyway, so if it's not that end, then I can just put none in there. And the other case, in fact, I never added that to the test either, is, you know, allowing both ends of that to be empty. So before we unwrap the start as well, then we can put that there. In fact, I need to do the same for maybe end. I apologize to anyone watching this as well, because I can't imagine anyone outside my own head currently understanding the the insanity of what I'm doing right now. So but it'll get better someday. No. Okay, so 6 errors, and I feel like that's at least covering the logic and implementation that I want to perform. Is there any way I can simplify any of this other than just like putting stuff, like bunching stuff onto lines for the sake of it? Not really. Though, even though earlier I was saying that I'm converting a compile time guaranteed match into a runtime one, I'm still doing this kind of stuff. So realistically, it wouldn't be too much of an issue, but I don't, again, until I can actually handle the generics and the closures, I don't think it's worth diving into that. So recursive type is infinite size. It absolutely does. I'll need to add some boxes there. So that's on the new index range, I'm guessing. Oh, hang on. I have to put a box around the option expressions. That's a bit unfortunate. Even though you don't have to put a box around vectors. That's a bit unusual, I feel. So then parser will need to introduce some new boxes for those ranges. Six errors still, but I think we're getting closer to the end of them. Well, I hope. Maybe start this yeah. What's can I do that to dereference it? No, six errors still. Dereference box. Yeah, they're all kind of the same issue. So that's just in the AST, that's just some syntax, I'm guessing. Index range. Not sure why that didn't have a, oh, I was probably messing around with the definition earlier. 5 errors, val, just some semicolons and things. So 815. Oh, it's because I'm doing I should be doing an if-let. And am I doing the same up there? No, that's all right. Expected a box but got an enum. Not sure how to resolve that. Can I assume I can't do something like that. No, it's so expected a struct box of option of expression bound an option variant. Let's look up some Rust basics. Into raw consumes the box. I don't think that's what I want. Let's take a look. Is that the only place I'm using? And for some reason, vex are alright. You don't need to box vex. Could I do an option of a boxed expression? Because I don't like the rest of the stuff. I haven't needed to worry about boxes. Yeah, maybe I'll do it that way. And I'll have to update how that's tricky. What's my best way of then in fact, will that still work? Yeah, so how do I put a box inside an option? So I probably can do something something like that. Yeah, and apply box to it. So start map v and then box v, and then do the same with n. Try that. And 3 issues. Seems to get rid of the box issue at least. Line 290 is probably something to do with assignment, yeah, binding. So where did I put it? Can I borrow maybe start as mutable? Where is that? 1088. Is that in a val? Did I change the line? 1091. Okay, yeah, sorry. Can't borrow it as mutable. Can probably just do that. Probably shouldn't be mutating parameters, but actually that's kind of alright with Rust, I suppose, because, well, it's less to do with kind of safety, I guess, and more just to do with understanding that if your parameters are coming in as one thing and you mutate them, then, but I suppose that's then declaring that, hey, someone might be mutating these variables in this function, whereas other languages, you just can't rely on the parameters being as you expect. Anyway, yeah, the the output rendering, especially since valref with source got introduced. The rendering has been pretty verbose. I suppose I can add a bit of pretty printing back in to at least put these on different lines, and hopefully make it a little bit more comprehensible. So let's see. But that output looks more or less similar to what I expect. So the first gives us back 1, 2, 3 as expected. The second should be 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's good. 1 to 5 should be 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Up to 3 should be 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Oh, hang on. What's going on there? Interesting. So we have up to this point seems fine. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, which is what we'd expect. So it's index inclusive index 1, so 2, 3, 4, and then this is the index 4 exclusive end is 5, and so that's what we'd expect. This is not what I'd expect. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for an index up to 3. Index from 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5 is what I'd expect. And then the last one I'd expect to be the whole list again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, exactly. So it looks like this third example is missing. It looks like the number 3 is being dropped somewhere. So it's probably being converted to a none value at some point. So let's take a look. And what was the other thing I wanted to take a look at? Yeah, just to see what happens with out of bounds in indices. Let's take a quick look at that. Do I have? I may not have negative numbers in this language yet. Interesting. Okay. That's all right. I'll just emulate negative numbers. Yeah, cool. So that's an out of bounds. And then if I put 6 in there, then what happens? That should be out of bounds too. Oh, interesting. Is that a Rust thing? Does Rust allow you to interesting. So let's see. Play Rust. That yeah, I'll put in lang because I could get bad results otherwise. So let's see. Maybe my test will be x's will be vec 1, 2, 3, and then x's 0 to 3. Let's run that. Or in fact, we'll do get 0 to 3. That should give us our 1, 2, 3 back. Yeah, just debug output, and we get some 1, 2, 3 back. This will give an out of range error. Okay, interesting. So that can be blocked at compile time anyway. And then 0 to 4, what does this give us? That gives me none. But then why does that seem to be working for my example? Interesting. So I suppose I've two things to investigate here. So I'll start off with printing that. And I'll start off with checking the parser, make sure that it at least seems like it's doing the right thing. So boxing that, yeah, that makes sense to me. And then the evaluator, the evaluation is just so so hopeless at the moment that it really wouldn't be a wonder if it introduced some issue. Yes, I don't check if it's yeah, so I wasn't checking. So if the start wasn't specified, then I wasn't checking was the end specified. So that would account for that behavior. And that gives me 1, 2, 3, which is, yeah, what I'd expect. So now the other part of what I wasn't expecting is support for these out of bounds ranges. So two things actually kind of surfaced here. One was negative numbers being, and in fact, how does it handle, so if I have a bad range, like 2 to 1, yeah, it just doesn't even try. So, whoops, so I can get rid of that now. I would nearly expect this to panic. But it's saying index out of bounds, which is true, but let's see. And it's coming up on the hour again already. That it was very quick today, and I only got one feature done already, on bordering on getting a second one. Might be able to get that guy done, but yeah, I would have to see. And I didn't get my block refactoring done yet. So yeah, so let's just do this print line. although I'm not going to be able to do that, am I? So what I'll do is, because those will have been destroyed by that point. Ah. Okay, let's try that. It can't be formatted with the default. Yeah, I was half expecting that. Yes, that's more like what I was expecting. Yeah, because it converted a negative number to a U size, but yeah, and I suppose I'm kind of surprised that didn't panic actually. Rust put up very little fuss for me, dangerously casting it to, well, I suppose I explicitly said cast it to a U size, and I'll deal with the repercussions. And I didn't expect to face consequences for my actions. I just do my actions. So yeah, so that's on me. That integer underflow, so that'll need to be addressed. Let's see, to do bug integer underflow when, or it's not even, that's not even when it's happening. Let me think. But anyway, that resolves that mystery sufficiently for me anyway. So then the next one is figuring out what's going on here. So some. Oh, was that happening before? Maybe I just wasn't looking at the output correctly. Maybe it was just, oh, okay. Maybe it was just there at the bottom and I just didn't see it before or something. Maybe if I watch the stream, I'll be like, oh, that actually was fine. Yeah, okay, that's what I expected. Cool. So then with that all said and done, let's go about just committing this code. So AST remove that space. Oops. And add support for index ranges. Again, one of these things that I was thinking would be a lot more straightforward, but overlooked the fact that I think the big, well, no, there were actually a couple of tricky bits in this, in fairness. Boxes are a bit bit of a surprise. They actually turned out to be relatively straightforward to resolve, but the nesting of the kind of mutex unlocking was a bit painful. But yeah, that's all right. So without further ado, the event that everyone was looking forward to, and well, might have just been me, but just doing a tiny refactoring to introduce a type alias for a vector of statements. So and I think you can just do this. I should probably rename that to statements for consistency with the other vector of statements. But then now that I'm actually using block for all these, it might make sense to refactor all the existing. No, I think statements might still be a little clearer. So that yeah, I think the type will be block, but the value the variable names will be statements. I think that's still clear enough. Actually, something I was considering doing as well is introducing, not sure if I mentioned that before, but introducing variables being immutable by default. And using a let mute syntax. So is that a case of this thing not not compiling again? So what I'll do is LALRPOP, I'll disable. So that hopefully it'll show me the show me the issue with ast.rust. Yeah, that makes sense. I need to put in. I was thinking it was a bit bare. Is that all I need? Nope. Is it? Probably good that I didn't take the estimated 5 minutes out of my other task to work on block, because no doubt it would have spiraled uncontrollably as usual. No. Oh dear, what is consider importing this type alias? Is it not being imported, but why? Cannot find block type. Can I just compile the file ast.rs on its own? I wonder. Or I could actually look up the Rust syntax for type alias. Type equals that. Feel like that's kind of what I'm doing. Oh, I really want this this new type. Do I have to? In fact, I probably don't have to introduce it here just yet. I can probably just leave that as statement. Oh, what am I doing? No wonder this was all going to. Wait, no. I didn't do it all over the place like that. There. Yeah, I have to be a bit careful here. Yeah, those should all be alright. And now that I've reverted the LALRPOP stuff, hopefully I can focus on just the AST. Okay, so that's compiling again now. Okay, so the do I have to import a type alias? Oh, is it because my goodness, do I have to do that? And let me see, vex statement. Expected statement found a struct string. Actually, I'm just going to take 5 minutes to pause here. Good. So so this is doing something funky now. Let's see, expected. So even though I changed them to oh wait, because yeah, that would make sense. Block and then block. As usual, doing garbage input gives garbage output. So yeah, let's try this now. And I might take the opportunity to rename block to I don't know, I'll do that in a subsequent commit. that's more or less it for the places where vex statement. I thought it'd actually be further reaching, but that's all right too. I think it cleans things up a good bit. Eval statements in new scope. Now that I've changed the, yeah, I can probably put those onto one line now. Cool. And then the other thing I wanted to do was in the ST, I wanted to change the variable name to that. And there are probably other areas, like while could probably reuse that as well. And for, no, for probably not. And while is, I think while is fine the way it is. So yeah, LALRPOP. And let's see, AST eval. And what was it? It was branch. So block down here will need to be renamed. And is that the only place where branches exists? Whoops, what have I done? Let's try that. Nice. So yeah, small stuff, but I think it all helps. And so that is rename block field to statements for consistency. And push. So with that done, that is so very close to moving on to the kind of more full featured. Where was that? Composite array range index. So that is, yeah, one more week down. I was hoping to have the last few bits done today, but those last two, like realistically, if I don't get them done the next time, then I'm happy to potentially just start working on the Laurel language in the next stream. Could be a bit of work in that, though it's mostly, should hopefully be mostly refactoring and just kind of restructuring what's there rather than actually adding anything new, so to speak. That bug of declaring the same variable twice in the same scope, I'll just take a quick look at that right now. Again, famous last words, but let's see what could be involved in that. So test index ranges. And the idea here is, if I have x1, I shouldn't be able to do x equals 2. It should give me an error on the second binding. So with that, so there's something like so assign so assign replaces name in the topmost scope of this stack and returns true, or else it returns false if name wasn't found in this scope stack. Assign returns an error if attempting to assign to a constant binding. Oh, and then declare. And so we have insert. I wonder, is there an insert or error? So let's see, hash map Rust insert. Is there an insert or maybe? That's an interesting thought about what to do in the case that the value was there. So this would ideally be kind of a non-recoverable error, and that's something I'll be getting more into at a later date. But let me see. Oh, I think headphones are slowly running out of battery. One is actually just about given up. In fact, it has given up already, I think. I have to keep an eye on my on the audio on the other screen to make sure that that the audio is still coming through. But basically, it might be trans the option if it or else returns the option if it contains the value otherwise called f. Can I do like an if none? So it does we'll try insert, tries to insert it. If the map already had this key, nothing is updated and an error containing the occupied. This was, however, before declare didn't actually return an error. So if the map already had this key present, nothing is updated, and error containing the occupied entry, and the value is returned. So if I tried to insert B at 37, the thing that was there, I get references to those, and the actual value that I tried to put in, I get that back as well. So so I'm not too, oh, but it's a nightly only experimental feature. No, I can't use that. So retain, no, that's a filter. what I could do is just try doing a get, and if the so I'll be taking this out of a lock anyway. So if so I'll have the mutex on it. So in that case, if let's see, what I can do is I can just check, if it has the key. Could be the simplest thing. So let's see, it contains key. So let scope stack. So let current scope equals that. I made this far too complicated in my head by trying to, chain function calls and be like, oh, use the REST built-ins, but realistically, this should be a very quick operation and like does exactly what, at least I hope it does exactly what I want. So if cur scope contains key and the key is name, then return error. Otherwise, and the error that I'm, the error that I'm returning is name is already defined. So that would be name. Otherwise, cur scope does an insert, and then I'll just give the all clear. Now that's updated the return type there, so I need to handle that. And yeah, I'll do the same as those basically. So if so assign has the same signature, doesn't it? So what I can do is, whoops, just deleted all that. And try that. And that should really be it. 1266. That should be mutable. Absolutely. Okay, so there are only 1,300 lines of code in this interpreter so far. That's not bad, in fairness. I think considering considering the number of features now, there isn't any proper error handling and things like that. Like it is, it's far from production ready, but it's that's a kind of a relatively respectable feature set, I think. So can't introduce in that scope, but can it, let's see. So this should output 2 followed by 1. Because it's introducing a new binding in this scope. Yeah, that's nice. That's quite cool. Yeah, so no redundant binding, and that is so that's prevent declaring same variable twice in same scope. Oh, just above the character limit. So there. Nice. And with that done, that that sorts out that aspect. And yeah, so that means that next week, hopefully, it should be a matter of let's see, yeah, audio is still coming through. I'm glad. So next week, yeah, I'll probably take a look at that refactoring of valref with source so that it's structured properly, that that the kind of source object associated with a value or kind of tied to a value is actually kind nested within that value's mutex rather than beside the values mutex, because the latter doesn't allow us to access the source atomically at the same time as accessing the value. So a small thing, but again, it's one of these edge cases that could, cause some surprising, very very intermittent issues in concurrent scenarios. So probably worth addressing. And then yeah, hopefully if there's time in that stream, I'll get stuck into the actual full-fledged Laurel programming language. So yeah, with that, thanks very much for to everyone who watched, and see you on the next stream. Thanks. Bye.